So today when I got to my office at Bridgeport, Michigan, in the mail was something that I ordered about a month ago from China, which was the Sega Mega Drive Classics. It has 106 games in just one cart for the Game Boy Advance. And the ad stated that it wasn't the actual Mega Drive Classics. It was actually games that were from the Sega Master System and the Sega Game Gear. Now, when I went through and played this and kind of looked through it, I believe that almost all the ports were actually from the Sega Game Gear, and very few were from the Sega Master System, if any. And I'm going to kind of show you what 106 games are on here. I ended up buying it for 11 bucks, which was a pretty good deal. That included shipping and everything. $11, 106 game. Obviously, this is a bootleg, so I don't really know what they would do on my end if eBay would have let me sell this from on the US side. I know I had some homebrew games before and they ended up taking them down a few years ago, but I don't know if the rules have changed or not or anything like that. So give me a second here. I have my DS. I'm going to end up putting the Sega game in here so you guys can see what's going on. It's my DS. I like my DS because it plays Game Boy Advance games. I also have a Nintendo GameCube, and on the bottom has a converter so I could play DS games on there. So let me see if we can get past the screen here. It says start with the... There we go. Shows it downloading here. Give me a minute. So here's some of the games. Kind of go through it here. There's Aladdin and Alien 3, which is really good. You can kind of read through it. Axe Battler was one of my favorite games for the Sega Game Gear. It was just like... really similar to Golden Axe Warrior. I don't really remember if it was identical or not. I never played the two games back and forth to each other. And then Battletoads was a really good game for the Sega Game Gear. In fact, I had that game and I remember selling it for quite a bit of money on eBay a while ago. This is kind of like the Nintendo version, almost identical, except cut short for the Sega Game Gear screen. And then another game that I really like to play was Double Dragon. Now, the reason why I think most of these ports are from the Sega Game Gear and not the Master System is this Double Dragon version is identical to the Game Gear and not the Sega Master System. They had two different versions. I prefer the Sega Master System version because you can play two-player. I think on this you can too. This one I ended up beating for the Sega Game Gear when I was a kid, and I remember you had to start fighting aliens and stuff at the end. It was really bizarre. And then there was Dragon Crystal. If you ever have time to play that, was an interesting game. Kind of like a short RPG type game where you have like a dragon behind you. It's an egg at first and it hatches into a dragon. It's a really, really unusual game. I had a lot of fun playing it when I was younger. I ended up ordering it from Europe and it worked perfectly on the Sega Master System for the US version. Probably about 10 or 15 years ago, I bought it on eBay. And you can see there's a lot of games here that were on the Sega Master System and the Sega Game Gear. Most of the Sega Game Gear ones over here in the US were ported over to the European Sega Master System. So they're pretty much the same. There's Mega Man on here. That's a pretty good game. Now, one of the things that I was really disappointed was the Ninja Gaiden version is the Sega Master System, or the Sega Game Gear version, and not the Sega Master System version. If you have the Sega Master System version for Ninja Gaiden, or Ninja Gaiden if you want to call it, it is a solid game. I like it just about as much as the NES version. Graphics are a little bit clearer, I feel. Real smooth on the control and gameplay. This one's actually the Sega Game Gear one, which is not nearly as good as the Nintendo or the Sega Master System. Now, the Game Boy version for Paperboy, the Sega Game Gear or the Master System version for Paperboy was way better than the Super Nintendo. It was a lot of fun. And one of the games I used to play a lot was Putt and Putter. It's like a miniature golf game. Real good game. Samurai Showdown, another good game. And this was probably my favorite Sega Game Gear game was Shining Force 2. If you like RPG and you like Shining Force, this is definitely a game you're going to want to buy. And you can see you have all the Sonics on here. Stargate, both the Streets of Rage, real good games. Super Columns, and Smash Brothers. Super Smash TV, not Smash Brothers. Used to have Tails Adventures. That was a really good game for the Sega Game Gear. And then Vampire Master of Darkness was real similar to Castlevania, if you want to play that. Woody Pop was a pretty interesting game. And then they had some X-Men one. Let's go back and see. Zoopum. Never played that one. But yeah, you can see what's on here. Kind of an interesting type of buy for $20. I'm sorry, for $11.99. That was really worth it. No shipping and handling or anything like that. And I have to say it was a pretty good buy. Even has a save battery thing inside the game I was looking at when I took it apart and looked at it. There's a battery to save games. I'm not sure if it works real well. I haven't checked it yet or not. But in my opinion, a good buy. Not the Sega Genesis games or what they say on there is the Mega Drive. Not any games of that nature on here. All mostly Sega Game Gear and maybe some Master System games if you want to say they are or not. I'm not sure. But this is Mark Knar, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.